Why Iissiidiology is written using extremely difficult for understanding language. Is it possible to simplify its presentation? I know that many people are interested in your idea, but most of them are frightened and disturbed by the complexity of the information presented. This huge number of complex terms, sentences that sometimes take half a page, and many people understand that they cannot apply it in their everyday life. And you, having access to such information, receiving such complex information, could possibly write it much easier so that the majority of people could use this information and apply it in life. Why is there such complexity in writing Iissiidiology? The complexity is the result of information complexity. It's the result of its depth. After all, the way I was explaining something now, many things cannot be explained yet. To explain something, it is necessary to introduce new terms, new interpretations of these terms, new explanations, more comprehensive and more detailed, and which are interconnected with some other things that we do not yet know. The reason for the appearance of such complex Iissiidiology terminology is similar to that of medicine. To denote something, you need to give it some kind of vibration, a definition. Assume the brain consists of a large number of different centers, functional parts that are functionally different from one another. Because of that, literally, each brain convolution is named differently. These names did not exist before this convolution was found, before its function was determined. Nobody knew what it was, and because of this, a new definition is required. The same is here. Because there are a lot of completely new conceptions, entirely new relationships are introduced, manifested, and offered for study. All of this is required to be defined somehow. This is firstly, that without this terminology, it would have been simply not clear as to what is being discussed, or rather, it would have been understood completely incorrectly. As for example, the word continuum. Continuum in physics means one thing, and Iissiidiology implies completely different meaning. Same as wave, vibration, single momentness, and so on. There are a lot of things that need to be explained from the perspective of new conceptions. The reason is that in the future worlds, far greater brain areas, namely in the cortex, are activated in our self-consciousness, that functionally play a more active and more important role than they currently do. In order for our configuration to correspond, in a greater extent, with those configurations that are already now present in the future, we, as our own personal interpretations in the future, in our future existence, it is necessary to transform the activity of our brain accordingly. That is, to activate such cortex areas that currently serve as transmitters of much more rough and primitive interrelations and are the participant of primitive neural connections than those that are common for us in the future. Every year, I would even say every month, the quality of information and informational flow becomes more complicated. The internet evolves. This fact requires a very serious intuitional development. To know how to navigate in all these informational flows so as to not waste time on something that is not of interest to you. But what is presented under good name, convenient, a popular name, but actually excludes the information that is of interest to you. Intuition is required so to waste time studying this unnecessary information. We need intuition to recognize the reliability of a lot of new information. That is, as any statement can be interpreted by you as correct or incorrect. So, in order to not make mistakes and to not lose the right information, you should be able to intuitively recognize it. This requires practice. And, in fact, Iissiidiology and paragraphs that are there are a powerful mechanism for the effective intuition and intuitive intellectual development. Exactly the intuitive intellect in the self-consciousness of an individual who studies Iissiidiology. Without this, all of our attempts to synchronize, to resonate with configurations of our more qualitative interpretations are doomed to fail. That is, in these more favorable worlds where we aspire to, we are much more intuitive, and therefore we possess much greater abilities and realizational opportunities, which allow us to make much more correct, more efficient choices, and in general to manipulate the space-time in a much greater degree than we do now. Therefore, Iissiidiology also needs to be perceived as a powerful training for the development of intuitive intellect and high vibrational sensuality. This means that it is taking place the synchronization of the right and left hemisphere of the brain, of their centers, and the interrelations between the right and left hemisphere. In fact, it plays a very important role here. I will not go into the details, but the cingulate cortex is the link between the limbic system and the neocortex. And, in general, the whole function of the limbic system and neocortex, as cortical, so and subcortical, is significantly improved and stabilized and completely new comparing to our current manifestations. That is, such who you are present now, in the future, think very differently than the ones who think and feel themselves here right now. And there cannot be any talk about any advancement until your psycho-mental dynamics will correspond with such levels that are typical for you in the future. Because it cannot happen that here you are in a primitive state, the majority of people are present in exactly such states, and suddenly you sharply refocus there where you're completely different, qualitatively so incomparably different, where you start having some abilities and opportunities, and your psyche itself is completely different. The realizational orientation is completely different.
Вот справиться с этой задачей позволяет именно Iissiidiology, поскольку она автоматически
Iissiidiology helps to cope with this task,
связывает
since it automatically and naturally links our present existence with the most favorable options of our future existence.
нашего будущего существования.
90% of people, of the population, are yet not able to understand this knowledge, not able to accept it, because they have no interest or desire to invest energy or time to learn something that is of no interest to them.
Время на изучение того, что вам не интересно. Но те 10%, которые найдут в себе,
But those 10% who will find a desire, in whom will awaken the interest to deeply learn Iissiidiology,
глубоко
to understand it,
ее познать, хотя бы, ну не знаю, может для того, чтобы разоблачить автора или
at least to expose the author, or to more effectively manipulate their own mentality, their own choices, and own surrounding reality
выборами
by bringing them in line.
приводя их в соответствие.
Such people will understand how important this is.